How many psychiatrists does it take to change a light bulb? Well, it only takes one, but the light bulb really has to want to change. You know, I spent a lot of time talking to psychiatrists and psychologists about my anxiety, and if I spent half the time in dealing with the alarm that was in my body rather than the thinking thoughts of my mind, in other words, if I didn't do as much talking and more feeling, I think I would have gotten a lot better a lot faster. So in this episode, I'm going to talk about the state of alarm that's in our body that no one talks about, and how to heal from that alarm. And in healing from that alarm, you heal from your anxiety. So let's get into it. Hi, I'm Dr. Russ Kennedy. I am the Anxiety MD because I'm an MD who also struggled with anxiety for many, many years. And what I want to do is give you the information that I've learned over the last 25 years of being a medical doctor and neuroscientist to help you so you don't have to suffer like I did. In this episode, I'm going to talk about alarm and how that plays a key role in what we call anxiety, and how we miss out on treating the alarm when we get deflected into dealing with the anxious mind all the time. So it's really important, first off, to tell you what I believe anxiety is. I believe anxiety is two things. It's anxious thoughts of the mind, but maybe in greater respect, it's an alarm feeling in the body. And that alarm feeling in the body is what keeps the anxious thoughts of the mind going. In other words, the anxious thoughts of the mind create alarm in the body, and the alarm feeling in the body creates more anxious thoughts of the mind. So it just goes in this cycle. So if you can learn how to separate those two, you can really start taking control over what we call anxiety. Because I feel we spend too much time in the thinking mind and not enough time in the feeling body. And that's what this segment is all about, to deal with the alarm in the body. And I will do videos that will deal with the thinking mind as well. But in this particular video, I'm going to deal with the feeling body, the alarm in the body. And if you're here from Elephant Journal, welcome. Please like and subscribe. And if you're new here in general, please like and subscribe. So we're going to get into talking about how to fix that sense of alarm that's in your body. So as a quick recap, there's two parts to what we call anxiety. There's the thinking thoughts of the mind, and then there's the alarm feeling in the body. And the alarm feeling of the body creates more negative thinking thoughts of the mind, and the thinking thoughts of the mind create more alarm in the body. And that is what we call anxiety. Now, we spend a lot of time with the thinking thoughts of the mind, but we don't really spend a lot of time with the alarm in the body, which for me, I feel that's actually a greater source of anxiety than the thoughts. Of course, they both play into it, but in this video, I really want to specifically focus on how to look at your alarm, how to even see it, because a lot of people haven't even recognized the fact that there are two components to anxiety. And it is a unique theory of mine, and it's something that I want to get out into the world. So if you can spread this video, I would really appreciate it. So let's get into it. What do we do with our alarm? How do we get alarm anxiety relief? Well, there's three ways, and we have to go at them in order. And the first way is to find your alarm. And finding my alarm was absolutely critical for me to heal from anxiety, because I didn't even know it was there. When I have patients now, I always ask them, where do you feel the anxiety alarm in your body? And many of them have never actually looked for the alarm that's in their body. And it's such a key factor in helping you heal that I really want to get the message out there that we have to start training ourselves to find this alarm in our body. So for me, it's right to the right of my solar plexus. It feels like a fist. It feels black. It feels dark. That's where my alarm. And when I took a little trip on LSD, my only trip on LSD, and the only reason I took it was to try and find out why I was so anxious. And it gave me a message. It told me that your alarm is the cause of your anxiety, and it's been there since you were a child. So now I had this other location where my alarm was, and it allowed me to develop this theory of anxiety, that there's alarm in the body, and there's anxious thoughts of the mind, and the anxious thoughts of the mind make the alarm worse, and the alarm makes the anxious thoughts worse, and it forms a cycle. So if we can break that cycle, then we can have a real chance at breaking our anxiety patterns. So I'd encourage you, if you've got some anxiety right now, or the next time that you're facing speaking in front of a crowd or going into a social situation that usually causes you anxiety, locate the anxiety or alarm in your body. Almost always it's in the midline. Almost always it's between your chin and your pubic bone. So really focus on this area. Because if you really focus on it, you may get a sense that this is the source of your pain. It's not coming from your head. It's actually coming from your body. And if you can isolate this, if you can find your alarm, we can use that to help break the alarm anxiety cycle. So as a quick review, in alarm anxiety relief, the first step is to find your alarm, to find where this alarm is located in your body. The second step is to separate the alarm from the anxiety. And the anxiety, to me, the way I describe it, is just the anxious thoughts of the mind. The anxiety is not painful. What is painful is that alarm sensation in the body. Anxiety is just anxious thoughts. They're warnings, what ifs, and worst case scenarios that your mind, which is a compulsive meaning-making machine, uses to make sense of this alarm that we feel in our body. So when we feel this alarm, this uncomfortable kind of fight or flight sensation in our body, our mind, which is just a meaning-making machine, has to make sense of it. And it makes sense of it by giving us worries, warnings, what ifs, worst case scenarios, which, once believed, create more alarm in the body. And the more alarm in the body creates more anxiety in the mind, and the whole cycle keeps going. So if we can separate the anxious thinking in the mind from the anxious feeling sensation in the body, we stand a really good chance of breaking free of anxiety by breaking that loop. So here's the analogy that I use with all of my patients. The alarm in the body is kind of like a smoldering fire, and it will just go out on its own, provided you don't keep aggravating it. And what we do with our thoughts is we just aggravate that alarm. In fact, it's kind of like throwing matches on a smoldering fire. So the alarm will dissipate on its own if you stop throwing thoughts on there. As soon as you throw a thought, it's like throwing a match on the fire. And of course, it's going to flare up again. And it will never go down if you continue to throw thoughts or matches on this smoldering fire. So what we need to do is learn how do we stop throwing thoughts, matches, on this smoldering fire. And that's part 3, which is focus on the sensation of your alarm. Because what you do when you focus on sensation is you take yourself out of that thinking state. You take yourself out of this projected future that all worrisome thoughts are about the future. So you bring yourself into the present moment of sensation. And when you're in sensation of this alarm and you devote your CPU, you devote your focus of attention directly on this alarm and away from the thought, you get a chance to feel it. And then when you feel it and separate it from the thoughts, you'll realize it isn't that bad. It's uncomfortable, absolutely, but getting used to that sensation, becoming more familiar with that sensation and being okay with it will allow you to proceed and heal from anxiety, because it's not the anxious thoughts that are causing the problem. It's this sense of alarm in the body. And the sense of alarm, if we just left it alone, would fade away, or we would get really used to it to the point where it doesn't bother us anymore. What happens is that we get this sense of alarm in our body and we compulsively add thoughts to it. And when we do that, we keep throwing matches on the fire, so it keeps going and it keeps getting worse. And it keeps feeling like it's snowballing out of control because we continuously and compulsively are adding worrisome thoughts to the alarm. So if we can just focus on the sensation of the alarm so that we're no longer focused on the thoughts of the mind, we have a chance to isolate that alarm and then we can deal with it. And I'll show you ways of dealing with alarm specifically, and I'll show you ways of dealing with the anxious thoughts specifically. But for now, what we need to do is isolate the two. And the best way of isolating them is to go into sensation. If we go into the sensation of the alarm, we are in the present moment. Anxious thoughts are always about the future. So if you bring yourself into the sensation of the present moment, even if it's a painful source of alarm, you are still separate from those projected thoughts and anxieties and worries and what ifs and worst case scenarios of the future. So bringing yourself into that sense of alarm separates you from those anxious projections of the future because they're separated in time. And then once you get the alarm on its own, and by that I mean not all wrapped up in the thoughts, then I can show you some really great ways of dealing with it. As a review, to get alarm or anxiety relief, you have to do 3 things. The first, find your alarm. Isolate that sensation, that kind of fight or flight sensation in your body, and develop a relationship with it. Get to know it, because it's going to be unique to you. And the more you get to know it, the more likely you're going to be able to develop a real good, strong relationship with it. And then once you have that strong relationship, then you know how to separate that feeling from the thinking in your mind. And the third thing is focus completely on that alarm sensation. And that's what the last part of this video is all about. So I'm going to warn you, this gets a little bit out there, but it's something that I found personally has really, really helped me recover from anxiety. And that's that sense of alarm, maybe, just maybe, is your younger self, the part of you that was blamed or bullied or hurt or abused. And it's coming out, and it's stored in the body. It's been said that our unconscious mind is represented by the body, and the body will show things that the unconscious mind is holding. So if this alarm is an old carryover from traumas that you suffered either as a child or as an adult in something like PTSD, then focusing on it and developing a compassionate relationship to it and actually loving it is going to be your way of healing that alarm. So initially what happens is we feel this alarm and we push it away. And if you had a 5-year-old child come up to you crying, saying that they wanted your attention, and you pushed it away, what's going to happen? Well, it's going to cry louder. It's going to get more and more upset. So that's why the alarm, the anxiety in our system gets so much worse when we push it away, when we distract with Facebook or whatever we distract with, whatever our addictions are. Basically, we're not paying attention to this part of alarm in our system that's crying for our help. And I know this sounds woo, and I know this sounds out there, and it sounds weird coming from a medical doctor and a neuroscientist, but it really has been the key to my own healing, is finding that sense of alarm and loving it and being compassionate to it. Because once I diffused that sense of alarm, the anxious thoughts just disappeared. So it's not the thoughts. We're chasing the thoughts in North American society with all this thought therapy, all this talk therapy. And there's nothing wrong with talk therapy. It's very important and very necessary to heal. But we're missing this underpinning, this alarm that's stuck in our body, that's been there from our old traumas. And until we deal with that, until we go in and develop a relationship with it and stop distracting from it and really feel it and love it and have compassion for it, that anxiety is never going to go away, because it took me many, many years to figure this out. So I'm saving you, hopefully, 25 years of therapy. And again, there's nothing wrong with talk therapy, but we have to do things for the body as well. And the biggest thing that I found to work for your body is to find that alarm and love it and have compassion for it and develop a relationship with it and bring it alongside. Because until I did that, my anxiety was completely out of control. So the next time you're feeling anxious, do this. Find the alarm in your body and focus on that. Focus on really having a compassionate connection to yourself. Because that is 1,000,000 times better than worrying around in your head, worrying. It's a much, much better use of your energy and a much more productive use of your energy to go right to the source and feel it and love it. So when you find yourself worrying, devote your energy into finding that alarm and loving that alarm and developing a compassionate relationship with yourself through that alarm. The only way to heal fear is with love. And if you can love yourself through that alarm, your anxiety will disappear. Now, I know I went a little out there, a little woo-woo on you, and there are plenty of ways of dealing with the alarm in your body. Yoga, Tai Chi, breathing, chanting, dance, anything that brings you into your body, brings you into sensation, brings you into the moment will help with that alarm. So it's not like just loving it is the only thing you can do. I found that it was probably the most important thing was to accept and love that part of me before it actually healed. But there are other things you can certainly do. And you can, of course, address the mind as well. Of course, do talk therapy. But what we need to do is address this alarm that's been in us for a long, long time. And until we do that, the anxiety isn't going to get a lot better. The last thing I'll leave you with is this is a practice. Some of my patients say, I can't find my alarm. It feels like it's all over my body, or I just can't localize it. Just practice with it. Look for it in the midline of your body between your chin and your pubic bone. That's almost always where it is. And if you can't find it right away, use your heart area. That's where most people do find it anyway. And then put your hand on that area and really connect to it and treat it like it was perhaps a troubled child, because maybe that's exactly what it is. Maybe that's your abandoned, abused, rejected child trying to come out and show you that they're alarmed and they need attention. And when you give it that attention, you combat the anxiety at its source. Because what usually happens is we get caught up in our heads and then we start thinking about all these anxious thoughts. And what if the problem is actually down here and we're stuck up in here? So we really need to separate the two, the anxious thoughts of the mind from the sensation of the body. And when we can separate the two, we can go at each one independently. And in my videos, I will give you specific videos directed towards the anxious thoughts of the mind and specific videos directed more towards the alarm in the body. But for now, really locate, find that alarm, separate your alarm from your anxious thoughts, and really love that alarm, because that's really what's going to heal you. Love is the antidote to fear. And if you can love that part of you that's alarmed, you're going to heal yourself a lot faster than a lot of other therapies will. So that's this video. It's a lot longer than my normal videos, but there's a big component to anxiety here. And if you really get this, you're really on your way of curing your own anxiety. And I really want to empower people to do that. So please, if you like this video, like and subscribe, and please comment below. I would love to hear what you think. I'm also going to include the link to the original Elephant Journal article that this video relates to. So in the meantime, this is Dr. Russ Kennedy, the Anxiety MD, telling you, don't believe everything you think.